Welcome everyone on our monthly Titty Talk. We did a lot of our Titty Talks during Corona on our phones in our houses, but now we're doing it in Galerie Fleur Wouter in Amsterdam for people who are joining us not from Holland. And today we're going to talk about the boundaries, restrictions, what you can do and cannot do when we talk about humor and about what is funny or not. So if you have any questions, just let me know in the comments. But it's not about me, it's about these three amazing people. We are very glad that we have Fatima, and she's amazing. Journalist, host of podcasts. She did a lot of amazing stuff also on television, online, and I think you're one of the... And next you're also an amazing person, Wiam. She's creative content developer, designer. She can create the most funny videos online on her Instagram. She must have her own show, theater or whatever online.
I am my own show.
You are the show, live show. And next to her is amazing Fleur. Fleur is owner of this great gallery we're in right now. She's also a stylist. She knows a lot about art. And we're going to talk about the boundaries. If we talk about like what is funny or not, and jokes, to call it that way, are there any restrictions if we look at art? Is there like something you can say, okay, that's over there, that's the boundary, that's like, you cannot go any further with that kind of...
No, there's not a boundary like that, and I don't think there's an absolute answer to this at all.
Yeah.
But in the contrary to like people working in politics, they represent a big group of people, and I think they should be much more aware of what they're saying, and they should take a lot of responsibility for what they say. But artists, the way I see it, are more like visual philosophers, and so what they make, what they create, what they show people, they have put a lot of thought in it. So it's well overwogen. How do you say?
Considered?
Yeah, it's considerate in general, and also in art, some artists use humor as a way to deal with a certain subject, and especially if you look at comic artists, I think that's a good example of where where that boundary is clear. I can't think of any artist in art history who was insensitive in a way where he used humor in a wrong way.
Do you agree, Fatima? Like if
I think art is art and humor, but humor is a very, very good tool to ask questions, to put question marks to things that are happening in society, to emphasize the things that are wrong in our society, to mock certain things that we have normalized. I think it is a very, very good tool, but it can, I think, that we in society, in our life, in the world that we live in, use art to excuse certain behavior, but also certain things that we say or feel just because it should be funny. Mm-hmm. We were earlier talking about crossing the line between humor and freedom of speech, and I don't have the answer for myself to say like, okay, this is freedom of speech, and this is humor, and this is the line that you've crossed. And actually, it's I don't think anyone has the answer, to be honest. Maybe some people do have the answer, but I also feel like we should be cautious, and we should be cautious into thinking that humor you can always be funny if it's meant funny. You can be very fucking racist and sexist whilst using humor to say something. You know what I'm saying? So, I think we should be cautious to not to be like, no, but it's freedom of speech. Everybody should say no. Not everybody should say whatever they're thinking. That's what I kind of feel like.
How do you feel about it?
I agree. As in humor, people laugh. When people laugh, it's humor. So some people, there is freedom of speech, yes, but again, you don't want to, for me, humor, it needs to have a context. So when you're being funny, when someone laughs, that's the goal, right? Like, okay, that's the goal. But where does that freedom of speech end? Where the line where it ends is where you're crossing certain. It's so hard.
When
you're
really
crossing,
Yeah,
when you're actually when you're aiming at marginalized groups, for instance, because that's what we're talking about, the oppressed groups. When you're punching down, that's when it goes wrong, because you need to think about your joke. Okay, what am I doing with this joke? Okay, people can laugh. It's easy to make people laugh, but what are you doing? Like on the surface, like what are you doing?
What are you trying to say?
What are you trying to say?
But also, it's maybe the crowd. For example, if I'm a white comedian, and I have a white crowd in front of me, am I going to like put on an Indian accent and be like, I'm not gonna do the joke, but is that really something that you want to do? What are you trying to do? Like, you're being racist in that point. That's how I feel. But if you are an Indian artist, comedian, and you are in India in front of an Indian crowd or people who are from the country, it's a different context. Because you are part of that community and you are talking about yourself in that sense. So I think, what you're saying, context, it is very...
Still, in that case, there could still be someone in the audience feeling beledigd. Insulted. So it's very personal whether someone finds something funny or insulting. There's not a line to draw there, but I think the point you just made was a good one. When you're... shooting down, that's probably a point to draw a line.
Yeah, because the thing with being offended because of jokes, when you're offended by a joke, how personal are you taking it, and how do you position yourself towards that joke, and what is the joke? So, for instance, if I would make a joke about men with little dicks,
I'm already
some
laughing.
people would, like, some men with little dicks would feel offended. But I'm not perpetuating, like, I'm not taking away your chances in society by making this joke. Like, I'm not further marginalizing you as a group as men with small penises. You know what I mean? Like, but when I would make a joke about trans women as a general, like, oh, trans women, blah, 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 and whatever joke, it's already made, because all the jokes are made about trans women, like the transphobic jokes are all made by the white male comedians, white male cis comedians. You're actually just adding on to their oppression.
Yeah, it can be oppressive. Yeah, humor can be oppressive. Well,
really?
Of course, because people are laughing, and when you're laughing, you're creating this sense of it's us against them. And when you're making a joke, it's different if you're making a joke about a trans person. For instance, jokes about Caitlyn Jenner. You're just joking about Caitlyn Jenner because I don't agree with all her views and all of that. But you can make a joke about a trans person without being transphobic, per se. So it's really, you need to be aware of all the layers of oppression in society. So racism, sexism, transphobia, homophobia, to make these jokes, to be still ethical.
A very good example is Johan Derksen, who is the guy who is presenting Veronica Inside, like a football program, I guess. And he made a joke about Aquasi, the rapper, being just like Zwarte Piet, I think. He was like, oh, that's a quasi who's like that. And people were like, no, this is, you've crossed a boundary. This is not funny. It's oppressive, it's racist. I think that's a really good example of in what way is something humor and in what way is something racist, blatantly racist. That we say it's humor because it's freedom of speech. Yeah.
The reason people reacted so heavily on his remarks is because it was broadcasted on national TV in a very popular TV program. So because of the stage he was on, but I think if you look at Johan Derksen, if you meet him, he's probably a nice guy, and he, well, nice guy, I don't know, probably not, but whatever. But I mean, I don't think he has a very large social circle. His wife died, she fell off the stairs in his house. Why should we care about anything this man says, apart from because he's on this public stage? So that is where responsibility should be taken.
Like, do not give him too much attention, or like, because the thing is, he already put it out there on camera. It already.
Yeah. So what I mean is that when you're on a stage like that, so when you're a public person, you should take extra responsibility for the things you say. And then you cannot make jokes like that. Then it's extra not funny. Apart from whether it's a good joke or not. Of course it's not a good joke. But when you're in your own house and you're hurting nobody with your bad jokes, then whatever.
Yeah, but then well, you say.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I'm just... I think it's... I think it's dangerous to make excuses for people when they've proven us time over time in their history and the way they've reacted to things that they are like. I can say for wholeheartedly that Johan Derksen has done racist stuff. So I think it's good to be careful for like, making excuses and defending people, whatever their personal situations are and circumstances are. And the other thing on making jokes in your house, I think that's just like also making kind of like, obviously you're not hurting anyone, but who's to say that you're not going to make those same jokes and normalizing? I mean, you're normalizing for yourself. You're being like, I'm doing it with my friends and they don't care and la la la. But then when you go outside, you're gonna do the same stuff, the same behavior. So I think there is no situation at all that you are allowed to be, that you should be allowed to be racist or homophobic or, crossing that boundary. That's how I feel personally, because it just normalizes the idea that we can do whatever we want because we want to do it or something.
Yeah, and it's perhaps also a change of mind. Like, it's also something you have to consider, like, okay, this is not funny, so I should not make the joke anymore. I should I should stop thinking this way.
True. But I totally agree. But we're talking about freedom of speech and whether you can or cannot say something.
Can I interrupt you for 1 second? Because I want to know, like, Wiam, you create what I find really funny videos. Do you ever think about, before you create something, do you think about, like, okay, how can I tell this joke? Do you, like, in what way do you start your process?
Yeah, the goal is always to be funny.
Yeah.
To be as funny as possible. And of course I am very aware of, so as a comedian, when you tell a joke, you're constantly thinking about how will it be perceived by different people. So I always put myself in other people's places to see, even when I post a joke, like when I'm still looking at it like, oh, it's so stupid when you watch your own story or you watch your own video, like, how would this person view that? Okay, like that. Oh yeah, okay, it's still funny, like, or less funny or whatever. But when people, I remember just recently, during the lockdown a few months ago, I used the word gypsy, and someone told me that is offensive and that you cannot use that. And we were talking about this, and I was like, oh wow, okay, all right. I'm not going to do that anymore, because you get schooled. Like, that's the thing with criticism, with comedians being criticized, because every comedian's stand-up special starts with, oh, cancel culture, blah, de blah. You know, they all feel very attacked and what's well. I do believe there are people who take it too far, as in, okay, yo, guys, this is just a joke.
I don't know if we're there, to be honest. Like, I'm not a comedian. To be honest, I don't really enjoy stand-up specials. I love funny jokes, I love funny people, and I love funny movies. But I feel also like this is such a special time that we live in right now, where there are a lot of conversations being held about things that weren't given a lot of space. And I think and we can really think about things that we have normalized as a society, such as it's just a joke. Yeah, what does that actually mean? Yeah. I know where you're coming from, but I'm also like, if we are philosophizing, what's the word?
Philosophizing. No, that's not the word.
No, okay. Anyway,
can someone Google this?
Practicing philosophy.
Yeah, if
active philosophers.
If we're just like thinking about all these basic things in our society, we should also maybe think about what is just a joke, because I don't know that. If someone says like, hey, it's just I don't know what is just a joke. So,
okay, I take it back.
No, you don't need to take it back.
Because that's not what I meant. The way you said, I agree with you.
Yeah, me too, and I totally agree on you. But when we are talking about humor and jokes, like what it's also interesting to think about what is funny. I find jokes funny that are vulgar and wrong, and it needs to be a bit grindy, you know. Then it's funny. So it's easy to cross the line there. And I totally agree that this is a very special time, and now it's important to think about that line. Still, I don't think there's an absolute answer, and there never will be, probably. But also because what you said, it matters who says it, who are you talking to, and in the matter of Johan Derksen, wrong joke, especially wrong person, wrong audience, very inappropriate.
But I also think maybe like it's also the idea of if you don't understand your own privilege when you're making a joke, especially when it's what you're saying, the jokes that are kind of on the wrong side but still kind of funny. And
I'm not necessarily speaking about racism.
Or it can be anything. Sex. It could be a woman. It could be about anything. But I also like the jokes who are like kind of like, oh, that's kind of wrong, guys. But it's so fun, you know. Like I like that as well. But then I also think to myself like, yeah, what is his if it's a man making that joke, what is his privilege in that sense to make that joke? But those are all like questions that I still don't have an answer to. But I think it's really good to think about that and, you know, jog the brain into thinking differently, because now we have the chance to think differently.
Yeah, I think it's important that we keep criticizing people who make offensive jokes. And with offensive, I don't mean like personally offend someone, like how Caitlyn Jenner would feel offended because of a joke, but because it's pointed against her. Shit, what was I saying?
I don't know. But the roast is such a good example.
Yeah.
The roast that is such a good example, and I think that shit is super funny. If it's about certain people, I'm like crying from laughter because it's so funny, but it's also like at the line of offensive towards a person, and that's an example where I don't exactly know, was this an okay joke, was this not?
But because of the situation, the person approved for everybody, and he's standing there. So that's a situation where a lot more is accepted.
And it's interesting because, do you mean the Dutch version of the original from the US version of the roast?
I mean the US version, I haven't really watched the Dutch one.
I've never seen it actually.
Yeah, because the Dutch one, I think like if you watch like that one, I think already over there the boundary will be way sooner, perhaps also before it ever got like broadcasted, you know?
Yeah.
So that's also interesting. Perhaps it's not only time, like reflecting on what time are we in. Was this even already okay before we lived here? But like also different countries and different.
Yeah, the historical context of America is way different than what is happening here, and the historical context of Holland. So it's such an interesting question, and I don't know if we're gonna get the answer today.
And are you guys sometimes afraid of creating funny content, a joke, or putting an artist on the wall that can have a certain perhaps?
Well, art is something to reflect on. So if someone is offended or insulted by something we show, then I would like to go in discussion with them about that, and that will offer a new view, and that is what art is about. And I mean, we don't work with artists that are racist or homophobic or whatever, not that I know of. Well, I know that we're not.
Is there an example, because we're here in the current exposition Discomfort, is there an example of a piece that someone was intrigued by, or perhaps on the opening there was a discussion about? I see the person we discussed about it, Dutch TV host Johan Derksen, also on the wall.
Yeah, well, this is a series by Koos Buster. He's a ceramist, and he makes a series. He's been working on it for 2 years already. It's called Ornamental Plates of Almost Everything I Don't Like. So the people depicted here are people he doesn't like for various reasons, and there's also different categories. Like there is Johan Derksen, who we talked about, but there's also Gerdy Verbeet. You could be offended, like, why did you put Gerdy Verbeet in the same section as Johan Derksen? She's not that bad. No, she's not. I think the fact that she's hanging here is funnier than Johan Derksen, because everybody asks, why doesn't he like her? And
why doesn't he like her?
Do you know why?
He thinks that. Sorry?
Do you know why?
Yeah. He feels that Gerdy Verbeet proposes herself less intelligent than she is to come across sort of sympathetic.
Mm-hmm. Sympathetic.
Yeah.
So she's in a talk show often, or was. The talk show stopped, and then she would say things like, "Oh, hip hop, what is that?" And Koos feels that's a thing that a lot of women of his age do, and it reminds him of his mother a little bit. So, that's subtle. Yeah. I don't see anyone laughing, but I thought it was funny.
Gerdy. Who's next? Who are the other people?
Lil Kleine, he's a Dutch rapper, and Buster, the artist, knows him from school back in the days, and he thinks he's a little bully. And Mr. Rutte, he's our prime minister, and he doesn't agree on that. And then we have Joe Exotic, the Tiger King. I think most people have seen the documentary about him, and he has a lot of tigers in captivity, so he doesn't like that for the animals. Cristiano Ronaldo, a lot of the times he scores against Ajax, and Ajax is Buster's clubpie, so that's why. And if he's ever going to make a series about things that he does like, he's going to make a Cristiano Ronaldo crying.
Oh.
Okay. And next to that we have drawings from the sketchbooks from Johan Kleinjan. He's a different artist, and he keeps journals. So for the past 20 years, everything that he does, and he makes drawings about it, and some for the past 20 years. So the time has changes over that. And if you look in those books, there's probably going to be some jokes, because he makes it into sort of funny drawings and stuff like that. There's a lot of things in there that a lot of people will be offended by, I think.
Are there already people who visit your exposition who were like offended by something made here or what that was on the wall?
No, but that could happen. I'm
Gerdy.
aware of that.
Perhaps.
She didn't come by yet.
Yeah,
I remember what I wanted to say.
Yeah, please do.
Whew. I had that blackout, and I'm like, yeah. So what I wanted to say is that so comedians shouldn't be afraid of what they would say, of what they can joke about, as long as they are open for criticism and they listen to criticism, and that because they really think that they're untouchable, because the comedians in the 80s, 90s, and whatever,
and everybody can make mistakes.
Exactly, and own up to it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the thing, and learn from it, and why, especially as a white cis male man, That's what I want to say.
Theo Maassen said something that I think is interesting. He's a Dutch comedian. He said, I'm all for freedom of speech, but I'm not for personal beveiliging? Security.
Yeah.
So
Same.
in this way he's saying, of course you can say whatever you want, freedom of speech, but just feel when you cross a line, when you go too far.
Yeah.
Do you agree, Fatima?
I don't know.
This is probably not a rule that we can apply. This is not the answer to your questions, but I think it's interesting.
Yeah. There's also, I don't remember who said this. I really don't remember, but a comedian once said, like, the more offensive your joke is, the more funny it has to be. Like, it has to be so funny. Like, if it's offensive, it has to be so funny that it...
Can you recall, like, a good example of something you listened to, you saw yourself, or you've done yourself? Could be also.
There's a joke that I really had to laugh with, and it's so misogynistic. But I had to laugh with it, and it's still, still funny. But then it's like the okay, I'm not gonna say.
You don't
this.
have to tell the joke. It's
but this joke is offensive.
Yeah.
But it's funny, so I'm like.
I mean, it's not gonna be funny if you say it right now. And I mean, if you're gonna say it right now, I don't think it's gonna be just as funny as when that person said it. Like.
Okay. No, but
you can tell. You can.
Yeah, like the useless skin around the vagina is the woman. Like
That's funny. Is that really the worst thing you ever said?
It's not the worst. I didn't say it. I've heard it. I've heard it, And I'd like to turn that around. If you say the useless skin around the penis is the man, then it's funny. That's funnier because you're punching up and not down.
Yeah.
So what is, if we could like, kind of, we're almost at the end of the talk. Did you make the joke?
That's not my joke.
But if we could like, we're almost at the end of the talk. If we could like summarize a bit, it's like, do not punch down. I think is perhaps one of the
unless it's very. I think with the roast, it proves that you have to really attack a person.
Yeah.
Not attack, but like have one when you're joking about certain characteristics of a person, I think that's fine. And not towards a group or towards I think.
And that person is there for only that reason. And I think if you're within a group of friends, your friends can say much more to you, and you will still not feel offended. But when a stranger says things like that, the same, comes up different.
Yeah, I think it's all about know your own privilege. What is the context? What is the situation? I think if you don't, and if you have like good answers to those questions, I think the joke or the art or whatever you're gonna make would be good. But I think if we don't think about those very basic things and just shy away behind, no, it's freedom of speech, I should be able to say anything, and like be that whole white supremacy can be in everyone, and we live and breathe in white supremacy. So I think like in the whole arrogance and that whole thing, and if we don't question our gut instinct and our ego, in those situations, it's going to be offensive. Yeah, it's going to be a bad joke. People are not going to like it, and you're going to get a lot of criticism. But I think if you think about your privilege, the context, the situation, the people you are saying the jokes to, you should be able to do and say a lot of things, I think.
I think this is the best ending of this talk, really. Thank you so much, Fatima, Wiam, Fleur. If you want to know more about them, we'll go to their Instagrams. We'll give it to you also in our DM. And next talk is next month, but we'll let you know online as well. And thank you.
Yay! Thank you.